Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place for creative and inspiring learning from around the world. Listen to teachers, parents and mentors share how they are supporting children to live their best authentic life and are proving to be a guiding light to us all. Hello and welcome, and thank you so much for deciding to spend some time with us here on the Education on Fire podcast. I'd like to thank the National Association for Primary Education for their continued support and sponsorship of this show. NAPE are currently supporting teachers by producing fortnightly videos which cover themes like art, school trips and literacy. Also, they are giving away e-copies of their professionally produced journal, Primary First. To find out more about the association, please go to nape.org.uk. That's nape.org.uk. I'm joined by Yasmin Alexander and Jenna Hope, and they're from the Yoghurt Juice Network, and they're going to talk to us about what that is and what they offer. But the reason I'm really keen to have this conversation is because since we've joined Learning on Fire, which was specifically for parents and teenagers, and Education on Fire, which was talking specifically to teachers, I was able to bring lots of conversations we'd had in previous series. So, for example, our wellbeing series, actually we can come back and bring some things which have come to light by people getting in contact and the way of actually expanding on some of the things which people have really wanted to talk more about, and we weren't sort of stuck in that kind of series related model. So I'm really pleased that this has been one of those opportunities that I can extend that. So Yasmin and Jenna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
So just give us a brief idea of what the Yoghurt Juice Network is and how the two of you got together, and how did you come up with the idea?
Of course. So we actually met on our undergraduate degree, which was nutrition and exercise. And we stayed friends. We went our separate ways to study nutrition after our undergraduate degree. And then one day we were going up to Nottingham, and we were in a long car journey, and we were listening to the radio. And really, they were talking about who to blame for the health of our children in the UK population. And they were passing it from, is it the teacher's fault? Is it industry? Is it the media? Is it the parents' fault? And really, we sat there and we got really frustrated because actually it's all very well sitting there and trying to work out who you're going to blame for this. But really, we felt that education is absolutely key, and we really wanted to do something about that. So it was in that car journey, actually, that the Yoghurt and Juice Network was born. And the name was developed because we have Yasmin and myself, Jenna. So that's kind of where Yoghurt and Juice came from. And what we do is we focus on nutrition education in schools, colleges and universities as well, to children, to parents. We do teachers' talks. But what's super exciting is that we have just launched our online platform. So now we can access more people around the world, particularly parents. We can really educate them on how to incorporate healthier nutrition, healthier diets into their children's lifestyles and get them involved as well.
Fantastic. And I really like the fact that everything really starts in terms of your own responsibility, doesn't it? You know, if I want to eat healthier, if I want to give my children more advice, both in terms of practical advice, but also in terms of sort of modelling what it is that we're doing in a healthier way, it starts with us, and it's us that makes the biggest difference. And I think by doing that can then morph into the schools. It can morph into any area that we're working with. And I really like the fact that the goal is your starting point, rather than just saying, oh, we're someone that do recipes, for example.
Yeah, and really, like Jenna said, the education is really at the heart of what we do, because, you know, adults as well, we might know that we should eat 5 a day and know that we need to eat fibre, but it's actually putting it into practice that we often struggle with. So when we do go into schools, we often do, after our workshops, we might include recipe demos and, you know, show the children and get the children really involved in how they can actually put what we're talking about into practice. So we really enjoy making it more practical as well.
And what's your take on when you go into schools? Do you find that children actually are probably more aware of exactly what they should be eating than their parents, or is it just depend on the area or the type of school? What's your experience in that?
So interesting question. It really does seem to depend on the area and the type of school, and also the influence of the parents. So often we find, you know, if the parents are very into healthy eating and nutrition and looking after themselves, then that tends to translate into the children as well. But equally, you'll be surprised at sometimes what the children are not aware of, and just small tips and tricks that we can provide them really get them really excited. And that's what we want to do, is we want to make nutrition education fun, exciting, desirable. And that's why, we do this outside of lessons. So we don't want this to be another lesson. We really want it to be engaging and practical as well.
And I think what it often brings up is the fact that we're all part of a community of doing this, aren't we? Like you said, it's in terms, you don't know what some children will know, but actually in their school environment, it's really important that we give them a broad education in many things. And this is an incredibly important one for their well-being, their learning, their understanding of what's going to support them in their lives going forward.
I think it's really exciting that we are bringing this into schools, and there's so many other school initiatives that are around health, because certainly when we were at school, myself and Jenna, there wasn't really anything like this. So we feel really passionate and really fortunate that we're able to provide that into a lot of schools now, because it's something that we really wish that we had when we were at school.
And let's start with this school focus then. Tell us exactly what it would look like if I was a student and you're coming in and delivering one of these workshops.
Of course, so it would really depend on the age, but let's take, for example, primary school children to start with. So what we would do is usually we work with the school to identify what key topics they want us to discuss, and that could be anything from looking at a basic introduction to nutrition and the importance of eating a rainbow, but more than just, eat a rainbow of colours, actually why and how you can identify different nutrients within those foods. But obviously that's done in a very child-friendly way. And then we move up to talking about things like exam focus, energy, digestion. So if you're moving into more secondary school, we're talking about digestion and stress a lot of the time, brain-friendly foods, and then moving up the school towards sixth form, we talk about preparing for university. So how you can really ensure that when you go off and fly the nest, you're going to be able to look after yourself and eat a healthy, balanced diet, because we know that unfortunately, when a lot of people go to university, that's where they start leaning towards the takeaways, the fast food, the high alcohol intake, and we're just preparing them for those next steps.
I really love the fact that it's education, but it's also about how it fits into everything. And I think I know everything's very exam focused at the moment within the education system, but understanding how that fits in with your life in terms of the bigger picture, but also how you can support yourself. It's not just about putting the hours in terms of doing your revision and that kind of thing. It's about, like I say, eating the right things, taking exercise, and how that's going to help you in the long run. And I think that's certainly one thing I wasn't aware of, is I was sort of at that sort of age going through school and into music college and that kind of thing. It's actually understanding that doing these things are preparing you in the best possible way for what you're trying to achieve as well. And that gives you a slightly different standpoint on why you do it and why you would take the time and actually have it as part of your framework.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many scientific studies now in the research linking food and how we eat to cognitive performance in children. There was one study that looked at berries, so I think it was blueberry intake, linking that to an increase in memory and ability to perform well on tasks. So I think when children hear about this, we think it's really exciting, but highlights this window of opportunity that we can use food and we can use our diet to really enhance our performance. And hopefully, like I said, we never had that when we were at school. So hopefully that does really motivate them and make it more practical for them and make them realise that it's small things that they can do that will hopefully have a big effect in the long run.
And practically, in terms of when you're in school, is it during lessons? It's after school? How does it sort of look from that point of view?
So if we're talking to students, that does tend to take up lesson time. So they'll switch out their lessons for our workshops. But then we also speak to teachers either at lunch times or after school. And we do parent workshops after school as well. But sometimes it will fall under sort of PSHE as well. So it really depends on the timetable of the school.
And so I guess if they get in contact with you and say, look, we really like the idea of what you're trying to produce, you can sort of work with them and sort of give them the best opportunity in the different versions that fit within their timetable.
Exactly. So it's really about tailoring our education and tailoring our workshops to the needs of the school and also the children as well. So if we go into a school that is a particular religion focused or arts focused or whatever it is, then we try and adapt the workshops to ensure that they're appropriate for everyone.
And just before we move on to sort of the online platform, tell us a little bit about your background in terms of, like I said, how you got involved in this, why you decided to study it, and what you got out of it.
So Jenna is speaking. I did my undergraduate degree in nutrition and exercise alongside Yasmin. I then went on to do a master's in nutrition. And then after that, I set up my own practice, which is nutrition consultancy, where I work with individuals, corporate clients, the media, brands as well. And then about a year and a half ago, Yasmin and I came together to form the Yoghurt Juice Network because we became so passionate about nutrition education in children. So that was my journey.
So mine was fairly similar. As you know, we started our undergrad together. I then did a diploma in nutritional therapy, which led me to setting up my practice as well and do similar in my separate business, do similar things to Jenna. But I think for me, it was really, when I was at school, I was really, really interested in biology and learning about how the body works, and I kind of just fell into it. I have grown up with family members who are quite ill, and food was, quite a big part of their lifestyle and because of allergies and anaphylaxis and things. So I think for me, like, food was always kind of part of my life growing up. It's kind of a big part of family life, but also I just seemed to be really interested in it, and I just kind of fell into it really, and it's been my only career path that I've been on, and I think it's really exciting because it's always evolving, and you can do so many different things with it. So yeah, it's really great.
And I think really understanding sort of your education and professional background in that is sort of really highly educated skills in that particular way is really important. And I know you're registered and accredited as well, aren't you? Which is important, I guess, for schools, especially if you're visiting them.
Definitely. And I think, unfortunately, in the industry now, it is so easy to do an online 6-week course in nutrition. But as a result of that, people then can go out, practice, and give out what we potentially would classify as dangerous advice. So for us, it's really important that, yes, we are accredited. We constantly keep up with our CPD, which is our continuing professional development. And really, another thing is that with our approach, yes, nutrition is vital. Education is so, so important. But at the end of the day, we appreciate that everyone has their lives, and sometimes nutrition cannot be the be all and end all. So we're very practical in our approach, and in terms of particularly when we're working with parents, of saying, okay, you know what, you're not going to be perfect. That's fine. No one is perfect. Life isn't perfect. You don't have perfect teachers either. And we've all got capacity to learn and capacity to insert our information into areas of your life which works for you, which might be different to another parent at school or the teacher, for example. So we're very, very practical with regard to the advice that we give out.
And do you go into some of the ideas of sort of habit forming as well? Because that's something certainly which in my life is come up in recent weeks and months, in terms of even when you have all this information about what you think you should do, what is the right thing to eat, how you can really help yourself, that's all very well when it's a mental idea, but can be very difficult on a practical terms. And so often it's just small habit changing and doing the things that you can do which build up to a bigger picture. Is that something which you cover as well?
Yes, definitely. And particularly when it comes to parents, we talk a lot about forming habits. And I think that often we try to overhaul too much at once, and actually you're never going to form new habits if you try and change your whole lifestyle at once. So we really focus on trying to change one thing at a time and rerouting behaviors as well. So for example, sometimes people might be, if they are a parent, for example, they might be used to making the child's dinner and then finishing off the rest of the child's dinner, whatever they don't eat, and then go and eating their own dinner. But actually we really try and encourage them to notice the habits and their behaviors that they might not necessarily be noticing at that moment, and then they can start to make changes appropriately.
Yeah, I think that really is good advice, and I'm sure there are many parents there that are nodding away in the background in terms of that just constant food going on. I'd like to say, from the children's food to preparation to all that kind of thing. It's a really interesting thing that I think people. I like the idea of the noticing bit, because that is the key thing, isn't it? We do so many things just instinctually or by habit that we don't even take into account, and I think it's a really important thing to point out there.
Yeah, and I think also in terms of forming habits, is to look at, say we're looking at breakfast, for example, or looking at meals, we want to focus on, okay, what's already there in terms of a meal? What are the backbones that are already there? And then what can we add on to that rather than take things away? What can we add on? Because if the bare bones of something already there, then it's a lot easier for someone to just add in healthier ingredients or just give it a bit of a nutrient boost rather than completely change something. So we focus on kind of piggybacking on behaviours that are already there so that it's easier to make the changes, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And having 3 children at home, I sort of know how some of these meals start to work and some of the conversations you have around meals. What's your experience in terms of how their palates change and their understanding of what they're eating changes over time? So, for example, I know when they're younger, for example, they wouldn't go anywhere near a mushroom, partly because of the way that it looks or the way that it feels, and whereas as they get older, they go, actually, this is nice. I enjoy this as part of something else. Is there a pattern, or there are certain things which you should just, as a parent, certainly think that might be something which just develops over time, or we keep trying it, or we introduce it in a different way? How does that work for you?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, and one actually that we get asked all the time. And the first thing that we would say to that is actually it takes a while for the child to become familiar with certain foods. So just because they say they don't like it once, that doesn't mean that they're not going to like it at all. So keep trying. Give it to them in different ways. So like you mentioned, that's a really good trick. So for example, rather than just giving tomatoes on a plate, as an example, mash the tomatoes into a nice sauce with some pasta, and some different spices. Also encourage them to eat alongside their friends, because often if they see their friends eating something, they're much more inclined to eat it as well. So sometimes, if your parents telling you to do something, you're not necessarily going to do it, but if you see your friend doing it, then you're much more likely to do it as well. Also get them involved in the cooking process, the decision making process. And we completely appreciate how difficult sometimes it is to take children to a supermarket, but actually that's the best thing, to get them involved in the shopping. So everything from where you buy the food, to how you're going to prepare it, to the preparation process, to the food actually coming onto the table. That's also another way that children are much more likely to eat certain foods as well.
Yeah, I do love that, actually understanding that what you see as the final product on a plate actually has this whole backstory of how it got there, and I think that's really key, and it's one of the things that certainly makes my wife and I smile quite a lot, is when we have sort of a pasta sauce, and we have these conversations about the various things that the children think they've never eaten, but they have no idea what's gone into the homemade pasta sauce, which is basically anything that we can put through with tomatoes that have been blitzed to make a pasta sauce with as much nutrients as you possibly can. And and they're interesting conversations as you get older, that you can say, but we prepared it like this, we've done this, and then as they're able to take part and to develop as well, they start to understand how, like you say, it's not black and white. It doesn't have to taste like this because you think it's this particular product.
Yeah, and also often the way, we even say this with adult clients all the time, the way that you cook something can really, really change the taste. So, for example, if you take a cauliflower and you boil it, it's going to taste very, very different to when it's roasted with a bit of olive oil and maybe some herbs. So, yeah, that really changes it. But I also think that our palates do change and mature as we get older. So something that we might have not wanted to eat and not wanted to accept in childhood, as we kind of move up into the teenage years, you might start to see that you then do like that flavour. So our taste buds and our preferences, I think they do mature as we get older. So we do need to kind of factor that in as well. But everything that Jenna mentioned, it just needs to be, as practical as it possibly can be, just making it fun, whether you can cut things into different shapes or just make food fun. That's really the key, and consistency. So you may have heard that it takes about 15 to 20 times for a child to kind of actually make their decision whether they will accept something or they won't. So it is just about repeated exposure. And when we talk about younger children, a really good tip is that if you're wanting to introduce a new food, to not just present that food to them on a plate so it looks really, unfamiliar and scary, to always introduce it with familiar food that they feel safe with. They're much more likely to accept new foods if they're with something that they feel comfortable with.
And just in addition to that as well, one of the things that can really cause some problems when it comes to feeding children is stress that parents can give off from themselves. So even if they're trying not to, be super stressy, but they are, the child can detect that, and sometimes that can put them off eating as well, and it makes the whole situation a lot worse. So really try and stay calm about it and positive, so that the child's always got a positive experience with food. Otherwise, if you start introducing negativity and stress, that can start causing more problems further down the line with children in relationship to their food intake as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've certainly witnessed over time, is that, you must eat this, you must eat that, drink more water, all that kind of thing. And it just becomes a regular pattern. It's the habit thing, isn't it? You don't even know you're doing it sometimes, and just being aware of those things. And I think the other thing that we've certainly done as parents is often focus it back on to our children as well sometimes, and say that, it's your body. You do know instinctually sometimes what it is that you need, so have this sort of two-way dialogue sometimes in terms of, what is it that you think is going to help you, what would you like over the course, if we're going to plan out the meals for the next few days. And it's almost like an extension of when our children were very small, that over the course of a week, even though one meal they might have only eaten carbohydrate or protein or fruit or something, that they seem to have a very balanced diet of what they will or won't eat. I'm talking when they're really tiny now. But sort of developing that idea as they get slightly older, in terms of them being able to pan out some of those meals, so that they feel like they've got a little bit of control over what they're eating as well, rather than just being presented with, today we're going to have this. I think that dialogue seems to really work as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is really, really important, because like you said, they start to take some of the onus and probably are more interested in it if they've had some input.
Let's talk a little bit about the online platform that you said is now available. Both, obviously, that means that those people who aren't here in the UK that you can't visit directly can really get some of the benefit as well. To talk us through exactly how that works and how they get access to that.
Yeah, so we really wanted to set up the online platform because we realised that, yes, we go into schools and we think that, we do a good job going into schools and promoting health with the children at school. What we really want to do is for that to kind of feed through at home as well. So we thought that if we also created a platform that is more targeted at parents to use and to do with their children, then that we'd kind of target a more 360 approach. And we know that, we're not the only people that are able to make change and influence our children. It needs to come from everything. It needs to come from the media, also from, companies, so manufacturers and policy. We need to all work together. So we just thought that this is another way that we can try and improve children's health. So we mainly we host it on a website called Patreon. So this is where people can kind of subscribe, and then they get access to all of our weekly content. So we put up short weekly educational videos. So these are kind of 5-minute videos for the parents to get education on a certain topic. We realise that they need to be short because parents are short on time more often than not. So we do that. And then our recipe videos are quick and healthy recipes, but these are targeted at the parents to use or to play with their children. So the whole idea is that we want to promote children being involved in the cooking process. So it's also a way that we can do that, and a way that we can give the parents an activity to do with their children, whether that's on the weekend or whether that's during half term, that this is something that they can do together. We also send out educational resources, and we work closely with a yogurt company, and we send out yogurt vouchers as well. So yeah, we're doing quite a lot over there.
Yeah, it really sounds it. And I think the access now to these things online is becoming more and more part of what we're just used to doing. And I think that's a really key thing in terms of engaging with the children as well when you're doing it. Like I say, being able to watch the videos if you've watched it as a parent and then you want to do it while you're preparing something or however it comes about is really key. And Patreon is a fantastic place for that to happen. So for those people in schools who want to find out more in terms of getting you in for workshops, or parents who want to find out more about all the online access, could you tell us where to go and visit and where to get that information?
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram at the Yoghurt and Juice _network and just the yogurtandjuicenetwork.com. Facebook is just the Yoghurt and Juice Network. So if you want to email us, we're hello@theyogurtandjuicenetwork.com. And you can find the online platform at Patreon. So if you go onto patreon.com and type in the Yoghurt and Juice Network, the online platform is on there. So bit for the teachers and then a bit for the parents as well.
Fantastic. And we'll have links and details of all those things on the show notes of this particular podcast episode as well, so you better click through and find out all of those things. If you go to educationonfire.com and then in the search bar put Yoghurt and Juice Network, that will then pop up. So Yasmin, Jenna, thank you so much for telling us all about what you're doing, and I'm really pleased that we were able to sort of circle this back round related directly to the fact that we've done our wellbeing season, and that's why I like the flexibility of our new format of the show and how we can make the most and support as many people as possible. So thanks very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you for having us. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.